Welcome to Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is a show all about music, music production, and the music business. My guest this week is drummer and nephew of Miles Davis, Vince Wilburn Jr. But first of all, the big news. The sales numbers for the United States for the first half of the year are up by 18%, according to the RIAA. Streaming now accounts for 80% of the total revenue. No one ever thought that would ever happen. Well, a few of us thought it would happen. There's now 60 million paid subscribers in the United States. Now figuring that there's only 350 million people, that's pretty good. Still a ways to go. Streaming alone brought in $4.3 billion in the first half of the year. That's up 31% over last year. Now the interesting thing here is a physical product only makes up 9% of the sales volume anymore. And believe it or not, vinyl about half of that. And maybe by the end of the year, vinyl sales may outpace CD sales, even though CD sales actually increased by a little less than 1%. Who would have thought, right? Digital downloads still account for about 9% as well. And that's pretty interesting given the fact that I don't know of anybody that pays for digital downloads anymore. Now, high-res downloads, perhaps, but not normal downloads. So the music industry made about $5.4 billion in the first half of the year, which means it's on course to do more than 10 and almost 11 billion, which, boy, it hasn't done that in a really long time. Now, again, this is all in the United States. Another interesting fact is that music contributes $143 billion to the general American economy every year. Now, this includes everything that has to do with music, musical instruments, touring, sales, publishing, you name it. If there's music involved, it's in that figure. But that being said, it's an enormous amount. So we should all be happy that music does play a major part in the average American's life. And it looks like it will continue to do so for a while, and they are paying for it as well. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@BobbyOInnerCircle.com. Don't forget about my online courses on mixing, production, branding, and music business success at BobbyOwsinskiCourses.com. Also, get an expert analysis and objective opinion of your songs and mixes as a member of my Hitmakers Club. Go to hitmakersclub.com to learn more. Now, it's the 40th anniversary of the Sony Walkman. And those of you who are fairly young are scratching your head and going, what is that? But it revolutionized the music business. In 1979, the Walkman was launched. And what it was a portable cassette player. Doesn't seem like a big deal today, but what that meant was you could actually take your music with you anywhere you went. Again, doesn't seem like a big deal, and transistor radios were around for at least 10 years, but being able to take your own personal music around with you was a big deal. It wasn't long before there were 200 million of these in the United States alone. Now, the Sony Walkman actually came about from the Sony Pressman, which was basically a recorder for journalists, which came out in 1977. But because the chairman of Sony wanted to take his music with him and was lugging around a big recorder, he asked his engineers to see if they can make something more compact. And guess what happened? The Walkman. When it came out in 1979, it cost $150, which is the equivalent of about $518 today. It wasn't long before cassettes outsold vinyl, believe it or not, in 1983. Now, to celebrate the 40th anniversary, Sony has come out with the digital Walkman, but it's actually pretty interesting. First of all, it's high-res. So it will play DSD files, high-res files, natively. There's a touch screen to it. It's USB-C, Android, and Wi-Fi. And guess what? It has a special cover that looks like a cassette. And then when you open it up, the touch screen looks like a cassette that's actually playing as music plays. So that's kind of cute. This is going to be available in November for a price of about $750. That's a retail price, so I expect it to be less than that. Nonetheless, the Sony Walkman lives in digital high-res form. My guest today is drummer and producer Vince Wilburn Jr., who has both toured and recorded with his uncle Miles Davis on many legendary recordings from 1984 through 1987. He is also a producer on the Grammy-winning Miles Ahead soundtrack and is co-executor of Miles Davis Properties. Vince has played with a wide variety of bands, including AL7, the Dells, and Cameo, among many others. More recently, he's been running the Miles Electric Band and was also executive producer on the Don Cheadle film about his uncle, Miles Ahead, as well as the most recent documentary called Miles Davis, Birth of the Cool. During the interview, we spoke about touring and recording with Miles, being a studio musician growing up in Chicago, pushing the limits of jazz, the responsibility of overseeing the Miles estate, and much more. I spoke with Vince via phone from his home in Los Angeles. So it was your Uncle Miles that gave you your first set of drums, is that correct?
Well, my mom, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I was a little drummer boy in the kindergarten play in John T. Peary School in Chicago. And so I just had this thing about playing drums. When Uncle Miles used to come to Chicago, when my parents would sit out in the audience, I wanted to stay backstage with Uncle Miles and stay in the wings and watch from the side. But I would always be fixated on the drums, the drummer. And back then, you'd have 3 or 4 acts on one show. So I was just always like watching the limbs of the drummers, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that, I wanted to play that instrument. And Tony Williams told trumpeter Wallace Roney years later that when he met me, he knew I was going to be a drummer. He knew that's what I wanted to do. So my parents, they talked to Uncle Miles about it, and Uncle Miles told my mom to buy me an expensive kit, and if I showed interest and that I stuck with it, then he'd get me the professional kit, and that's what happened.
Ah, got it. Okay, so you get your first kit, and obviously you're gifted. So what happens then?
So I get it. My parents buy me a kit from a Monroe catalog place, like Sears and Roebuck, but it's Monroe catalog in Chicago. It was a Norma kit, Norma. I go through this kit. Then my dad, Ludwig drums, they were in Chicago on North Damon. So my dad bought me a Ludwig kit.
Wow.
A Vistalite kit, the clear kit.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and I wanted a sonar kit like Jack DeJohnette, so I sold it to the guy down the street. And then Uncle Miles said he had just signed with Yamaha, which they furnished him with Yamaha amps, guitar amps, bass amps, organ keyboards, and drum kits. So they gave one to Al Foster, the drummer at the time, and they gave one to Uncle Miles, and Uncle Miles gave me his kit. So that's when I really started playing Yamaha drums. And at this time, I had bands, all through grammar school, high school, and Uncle Miles used to call him and have my mom put the phone down. And we could rehearse as long as our grades were. We could rehearse 5 days a week, play on the weekends. So Uncle Miles would critique us. He'd call us every day and have my mom put the phone down and listen to us rehearse, and then he'd, tell each member what to work on the next day. This went on for about 3 or 4 weeks, and this was like while we were in, high school, right out of high school, and that's how Man with the Horn happened. He invited us to New York to make Man with the Horn. He said, "You guys want to make a record?" So we were like, "Yeah." So he flew us to New York.
Where did you record at? Was that at CBS Studios?
The famous 30th Street Studios in New York.
Wow.
The original Columbia Studios.
Yeah, boy.
With Tio Macero producing and Stan Tonkel, the engineer.
That must have been an experience. Boy.
Man, first of all, we were excited about being in New York, so we ordered a bunch of room service. And we stayed at the Sheridan Center. And Dr. George Butler was the executive producer. He was head of the jazz department. And I'll never forget it because we were inviting our boys from, that from Chicago that lived in New York to have, come on over, man, have some lunch on us. And so Dr. George was getting the bills, receiving all these outrageous room service bills. So he's like, man, you guys got to be cool, But we were so excited to be in New York, and we were rehearsing in Uncle Miles' brownstone on West 77th Street, and they had all this gear from SIR come in. And then we recorded in New York at 30th Street. Man, it was amazing. Gil Evans would be there. He'd come out and hang out at the studio, and we were working with T.O. and it was beautiful time. We did a Downbeat interview with Howard Mandel. Made the cover of Downbeat. So it's pretty incredible.
How long did it take you to make the record?
We recorded around 25 songs in about a week.
Yeah.
But we were ready, man. His ideas and Uncle Miles was very instrumental in the composing and what he wanted from us, and so it was like we were churning them out. But only two made the record: Shout and Man with the Horn.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the material is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And then big fun playing with working with him.
Sure.
Working with Uncle Miles. Yeah.
So, okay, obviously he's your uncle and he's imparted some advice to you, but then you started to play with them. That must have been a different level then. Were you kind of divorced from being like his nephew at that point in time and just another musician?
You know what, man? A lot of people ask me that. It was never the nepotism thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the pressure was on to play or to sink or swim, So I'm kind of a guy, the more the pressure, the better I come out, swinging and produce,
Mm-hmm.
So it was just the right time, right place, right time, We started cutting. It was the 80s, and Uncle Miles was digging these funk vamps, and MTV was prevalent at the time, and he was digging Squiddy Politti, Mr. Michael Jackson, Prince, Cameo, and at the time, I think we were in the studio working on the song "Human Nature" for "You're Under Arrest,"
mm-hmm.
and I didn't think Al wanted to play it, or something happened, and he left. So I was co-producing, and Uncle Miles said, get in the studio. We got to record this track. So they moved Al's drums out, and the drummer Buddy Williams, New York drummer, had some Camcos. We were at the record plant. I think it was the record plant, and we called Buddy to see if we could borrow his drums. Rent his drums out. They bring the drums in, mic them up, and that's me counting off "You're Under Arrest."
Wow.
So it would happen like that,
Yeah.
The spontaneity. But I was under Al's wing, man. Al was, he's like a teacher to me still. All of Uncle Miles' drummers, Jack, Tony, Al, Jimmy Cobb, everybody, man. I those are my heroes, and they're like family members to me.
You went to American University, right?
I went to American Conservatory of Music, and all my buddies went to Berkeley, but I didn't want to. I wanted to stay in Chicago, so I didn't go too far.
Okay, so that was after you went to New York to cut with Miles?
No, New York was after that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We all just wanted to play, because we wanted to play. I thought I wanted to teach, but then I got bitten by the performance bug. So
yeah,
I was like, because my mom was a teacher. She taught at public schools, and my dad taught ROTC, but he was a military career man, career Army.
American Conservatory, then, is that what they groomed you for teaching?
Yes. Yeah. You had to learn all the instruments. Richard Patterson and I went there, bassist.
That's certainly a good skill to have, but on the other hand, it's kind of divorced from where you are now by a lot.
Well, I mean, you can learn, if that's your thing, you can learn it. You can get the degree and still have it under your belt. I just wanted to get out and play. Some guys finished and got their degree. I didn't. I transferred to the Miles Davis University. That's what I called it.
Right.
But man, it's good to have it under your belt. First, my mom wanted me to go to Florida A&M because she went to Fisk. you know.
Yeah.
And that's with Cannonball, and I think Nat Adderley was the head of the jazz department down there around that time. Oh. I mean, Cannonball had passed, of course, but I think Nat was still there.
Yeah, right. I read somewhere that you played with the Dells and with Cameo.
I played with the Dells. No, I played with the Shy Lights.
Ah.
I played with... in Chicago, we recorded with a lot of different groups because there was a lot of... there were commercials. They call them jingles back then.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of studios and a lot of kept a lot of musicians working, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of jingle houses. So I would do Soft Sheen. Soft Sheen was a hair products line by Johnson Products.
Yeah.
So guys would be all over the place doing ads, you know, doing these jingles all day, and you know, and then playing at night. So I would get a call from Tom. Tom Washington was an arranger and went on to work with Earth, Wind & Fire. He worked with everybody. And so he would call me for these dates. And so whoever called, you know, you could work at Curtom, at Curtis Mayfield Studio. You could be, excuse me, at Staples. Staples Singers had a studio on 103rd. You'd be all over the place. All these different acts based in Chicago had studios.
Mm-hmm.
You could play on demos. I mean, it was so much work. You know, at night we recorded at Paragon Studios, and Ohio players would be there during the day, you know, on Huron.
Yeah.
So it was an abundance of work for all of us, man, because the rates were cheaper at night. But I remember there was a stairway, and the Ohio players would be coming down the stairs from their session. We'd go up to record, and they'd pat us on our head, you know. They have these full-length mink coats on and shit, and it's like, wow, you know, that's the Ohio player.
Right, yeah.
So I tease Diamond about that to this day, you know, but it was a great time to grow up, and because we were all like sponges, man, trying to get all this music and play with all these different people. You know, Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions lived around the corner. The Five Stair Steps lived on 99th and King Drive. You know, we see the Iceman, Jerry Butler, you know. It was cool, man. And Pete Cozy, who played guitar with Uncle Miles, would take me all around they had the AACM, the Association of Advancement for Creative Musicians. They had the Pharaohs, that's with Maurice White and all those guys, you know.
Yeah.
They started that. We played with Ramsey Lewis. We played on his record, 3-Piece Suite. So, you know, we weren't turning down anything.
Obviously, that was a very fertile time for music in Chicago. And it's not like that anymore. Was the reason because of the jingle industry, because it was so strong and there was so much work?
You know, but I think it was the jingle industry. I think the music. There's no record stores anymore.
Yeah.
You know, the music industry was the music industry. You know, where you were making records and then touring. You know, making records, touring. Now everything is starting to be streamed. You know, you don't even have CD players in cars anymore. You know, back then they had record promotion guys. It was a guy named Granville White. We called him Granny. He used to work for Columbia Records, and he used to come and bring my mom and dad records. Then Uncle Miles told him, he said, take this to my nephew. Take this certain record to my nephew so he could, you know, check this out. And that's how I listened to James Brown, Big Payback, the immortal Otis Redding, the Band of Gypsies with Jimi Hendrix, you know, vinyl, you know.
Yeah.
And then my boys and I, we would go to put our money together and go down to Rose Records, go to record stores and purchase records, come back and listen to the entire record and dissect it and then loan it out to the next guy, and then he'd take it for a week. You know what I mean? Because we all couldn't afford a bunch of records. And it was fun, you know? It was exploring music and not just, there's nothing wrong with just downloading a single, but we would get into the entire records, you know?
Yeah, that's something that's really changed, not for the better. I blame CDs in a way because what happened was all of a sudden you could fit, 80 minutes of music, 78 minutes of music on a CD, and people try to fill it up. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of filler where when you go back to vinyl, you'd have 35, 40 at the most minutes of music, and it was really digestible, and it was really easy to listen to the whole thing.
And you had to get into it, and you had to listen and be attentive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Bitches Brews, on those records, those sides were 35 minutes, 20 minutes long, you know, it's like, but that's what you wanted to do. That's what our thirst was. We had a thirst for that, you know. there was a couple of radio stations in Chicago, the Loop and WXRT, and they would have live from the Agora Ballroom, and you could hear, all types of music. Then there was no, they didn't categorize music back then, I remember going to see Journey. I remember going to see Styx. I remember going to see Heart. I remember going to see, it was all music. The Styx, the Panazzo brothers went to high school close to my house from Chicago.
Yeah.
So I remember when the original Journey was Steve Perry, Steve Smith, and those guys.
Yeah.
And there was this, those radio stations there was no segregation. It was like you listen to James Brown, then the Chicago the group would play, and then you'd have Led Zeppelin on, and then it was a mixture of different groups, man. To be into everything was cool, You had to be ready, and then in Chicago you had to be ready to play anything. You just couldn't play just R&B. You had to play blues. Shit, we played polkas. You know what I mean?
I bet, yeah. Right.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Because we just, we didn't want to miss anything.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and we used to listen to the WMMR, which is the big FM station at the time, and it was the same thing. There'd be no categorization of music. It was all just
Hell
music.
No.
So you heard everything. You were exposed to everything. And then you kind of decided for yourself whether you liked it or not, and then you followed it, and that was really brilliant, and unfortunately that's not available today. Well, sort of in playlists, but it's not the same.
Yeah, and then, see, nowadays, marketing people, they market certain music to certain age groups, but man, back in the day, we could hear anything we wanted, my parents were listening to like some of my dad's friends like the Electric Miles, and some of my dad's friends like the Birth of the Cool and Kind of Blue and Sketches of Spain, and then some of my parents' friends like the Electric Periods, like In a Silent Way and Jack Johnson and On the Corner. So that's when it was fun, man.
Where do you come down on that? What's your favorite period?
I like it all, Bobby. I'll listen to Kind of Blue, and I still have my vinyl. I'll listen to Kind of Blue and turn around and play On the Corner, and I'll play Bitches Blue. Then I'll go back to Sketches of Spain. Then I'll listen to some of the Birth of the Cool. Then I move around. I've got some Japanese imports of Agartha, and man, I listen to that. I mean, vinyl seems just warmer to me.
Yeah, I agree. So then it comes to the point where your uncle asks you to co-produce with them.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? Because now you're in a different position with them. Now you're in a position where your opinion matters more than it did before.
Well, co-production with Uncle Miles is like just another set of ears,
Okay.
And eyes. But he made the final decision. Whenever you see a Miles Davis record, it always says musical direction by Miles Davis, under the direction of music by Miles Davis. It's because at the end of the day, Robert Irving and I, or whoever was the co-producers, we would take the dailies over to his house after, he would leave early, and then he would listen to them, and then the next day he'd come in and change things, So we were just like another set of ears and eyes, that's all. But he trusted us. That's an honor.
Yeah.
I'm not taking it lightly.
That's right. I mean, for anyone to be in that position, I think it's an honor, because for another musician to trust you enough to want your opinion is one thing, but when you have, a legend like that, that's on another level completely.
Mm-hmm.
You're closely tied with Miles' legacy. Has that gotten in the way of your career?
No, because luckily I have time to produce certain artists that I like. I had a production company called Nephew Productions, and under the banner I had artist Niles Rivers, I had guitarist Philip Church, I had a Persian violinist named Surin.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just financially, I put up my own money and I took a bath on it. I took a hit, but I had fun doing it. So to answer your question, no, because I have projects outside of the estate. I have this. I just finished this record called the Chi-Town Social Club with Daryl Jones, Nicholas Tremulous, Sean Christopher, and myself. And that's fun. And then I have the Miles Electric Band. It consists of guys that play with Miles, but we just recorded a bunch of music with Lenny White and I producing together in New Jersey. That what we're trying to do is in the love of spirit of Miles, but just a different take on new compositions. So, then I just did a Bernard Fowler's record, who's out with the Rolling Stones, a vocalist.
Yeah. And
he took all of the Stones lyrics and did spoken word on it. And I played drums on that.
Yeah.
So I'm into anything and everything.
Let's talk about this. So you're used to playing or producing excellent musicians and old school musicians who like to be all in the room with everybody else in the band as you're recording. That being said, the way things are these days, there's a lot of playing in isolation where you're layering and not necessarily playing to other people, you're playing to their tracks. Have you done much of that?
Yes, I've done things where tracks were sent to me and I overdub.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this new session, rubber band session, that's going to be out September 6th for Rhino. I did some overdubs at the Village here in L.A. So, it can come either way. We'll record together. I have a studio, so we record together, or I can. It's the sign of the times, Bobby. You got to be. A lot of cats do they do recordings at home and send you the files, and you overdub. I have a lot of musician friends that do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially all over the world, because it cuts back on. You don't have the big budgets you used to have back in the day.
Yeah.
So you gotta do it, cost efficient.
Sure.
That's why a lot of cats are setting up their own studios.
Okay, I read somewhere where it said that you wanted to push the limits of jazz, change the course of jazz. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember what interview that was where we got it from, but it's just that Uncle Miles taught me not to be complacent. To change and the music should have an evolution, and
mm-hmm.
never look back. So I guess that's what I meant, just to step outside. Like Wayne Shorter said, music without a net,
Mm-hmm.
So just to take a chance and see how far we can go, with the music, like Thundercat and Kamasi Washington and all those cats are doing it now, know.
Yeah.
But just, we respect, you got to respect the jazz Bible, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But just take it to other places.
Yeah, I always felt when you can incorporate other parts of music, other types of music into whatever you're doing, whatever your preferred genre is, then it grows, it just gets better. And the people that are so traditionalist, that kind of want to stay in the way it's always been, those are the ones that get stagnant.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. That's what this critic once told Uncle Miles. He said, Uncle Miles, he said, Miles, I don't know where you're going with this new electric music, and Uncle Miles looked at the writer and said, well, what am I supposed to do? Wait?
Yeah.
And that kind of said it all. What am I supposed to do? Wait? Wait for you? So you got to push the envelope, man. It's I'm the most nostalgic cat you ever want to meet, but I love new shit. I love to see what's on. Can't wait to wake up to tomorrow.
Yeah.
See what's in store. It's exciting.
Okay, so now, Vince, you're in charge of the Miles Davis properties, and that must take up a lot of your time because there's so many albums that your uncle did. There's always a lot of interest in what he's done. So that must take up a lot of your time going forward. Are there any new projects that maybe, no one knows about that are in the works?
Well, Miles Davis properties consist of Aaron Davis, Miles' youngest son, Miles' daughter, Cheryl Davis, and myself. And so we have a slew of lawyers and accountants and we have a great publisher, Cobalt Music. So if we get anything, like we get hit with tons of licensing, people who want to use Uncle Miles music. So we just deal with it systematically. It comes through the channels, and Aaron and Cheryl and I vote on it and say yes or no. So I hope that answers your question. Now, in terms of the music, what we try to do, we sit down, we have meetings, and we work with the labels to try to see what's the best way to market what the next project will be. So for your fans or our listeners, or this is like a process. It's not like we just sit up and say, oh, let's put this out. It's thought of down to the album cover, to the photos of the album cover, to what music, which songs in that period. So it's a process, but the way we have it, it's a group of us along with the label. It's a team. Mm-hmm. It's a team effort. So it's not like it's like painstaking. Plus, we love the music. You got to love music, and to go into the vaults and hear this unreleased music it's like Christmas every day.
Is there a lot of it?
Oh, tons of it. It's just finding the right things to release. So we're not trying to saturate or put too much music out.
That brings up a question. I'm sure you've been following what happened with the Universal Vault and the big fire that happened 10 years ago. Where is your uncle's archives at? Are they safe?
No, Sony, they have these vaults are harder than Fort Knox to get in. So the music is safe in different vaults and different labels. The Miles, the catalog from Universal is safe, and all the Sony music is safe.
Yeah.
So it's in good hands. And the art, we have artwork.
Oh, sure.
That's in the vault, because Miles painted.
Yeah, right, of course. I've talked to a lot of archivists that would tell me that they never know what they're going to find because boxes are mismarked. They just never know. Sometimes they're not marked at all, and you have to really go through and listen. Is there a lot of that, or is it pretty well documented?
No, it's both. It's and then a lot of times collectors are sending like live concerts and things that I've never heard. And we're like, wow, this would be great to put out. I mean, Carlos Santana has tons of live music from all. He's a collector.
Oh.
Not only Uncle Miles, Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley, and he's got a place up in the Bay Area. So we get tapes and we look through things that are unreleased. Along with we have a guy by the name of Steve Berkowitz, who used to be at Sony. So Steve knows the catalog real well, and he'll send Aaron and I an email and say, "Hey guys, check this out," and we'll listen to it. He's like, "Yeah, man, the quality is great. Let's try to put it out."
Yeah.
So it's a great system we have, and the labels are always like, in our corner.
Sure.
And vice versa. There's never really any conflict of, with the labels. Thank God. Or with our family, with Aaron and Cheryl and I. And that helps. That makes it healthy.
No kidding. Okay, Vince, last question. What's the best piece of business advice that you received from anybody or you learned along the way?
Well, Uncle Miles used to he was smart in making investments. And he had great investments and publishing. He was a stickler about songwriting and publishing and composing and, building a catalog. He has a great, as we see, he's passed away in 91, and he's Kind of Blue is still the biggest jazz selling record of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
So you want to stay. You want to be in contact with your managers. You want to be in contact with your accountants. You want to try to save money for retirement. And you want to keep evolving, because if you keep evolving, then you might get onto another niche of your music expands.
Yeah,
sure. We're always trying to reach a wider audience of music.
Sure.
Of listeners.
Yeah.
We're always trying to reach a wider audience. So it's not about reinventing yourself as much as it is. It's about reaching as many people as you can with what you have. So to answer your question, you have to stay on your business sense. You nowadays you just can't play music. You have to have an accountant. You have to have great team of lawyers. Have a healthy relationship with your label.
Yeah.
Great publicists. That's important too. Thank God we have Karen Sundell and Rogers and Cowan. And when you start your day, Bobby, be thankful for what you have. That gets me through the day.
Yeah.
It's a blessing, man, that I can wake up and play music or work on or be related to somebody who's changed the course of music 4 or 5 different times, and bask in that.
Yeah.
And try to treat people great. That helps, man. We need the love, man.
Yeah.
And I listen to music every day. If I'm not playing it or writing or composing, I have music on in the house. I got that from Uncle Miles. He'll turn the TV down and have the sound down on the TV or off, but music's always around.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, send them to questions@BobbyOInnerCircle.com. To listen to other episodes of Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle, go to BobbyOwsinski.com and select the podcast tab, or go to BobbyOInnerCircle.com, where you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Mixcloud, Google Play, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, TuneIn, and Radio Public. At BobbyOwsinski.com and BobbyOInnerCircle.com, you'll also find a sign-up form for my newsletter and for alerts for new podcasts. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.